I want to talk a little bit about Joel Osteen and the mass shooting that happened at his church. So who is Joel Osteen? He's a mega church pastor. One of those guys that has one of those super huge, gigantic corporate churches is basically what there are. They're churches, but that are basically run like corporations. He's kind of notorious for being like a cheat and a scumbag. If you remember, he was in the news not that long ago. What happened was that there was a guy fixing his bathroom, like the plumbing in one of his bathrooms, and they knocked down a wall, and they found hidden behind one of the walls in his church a whole bunch of like cash and like uncashed checks and things like that. Basically, it looked like a stash of money that somebody was hiding inside the walls of one of his church. In his church, in his mega church, like in the bathroom in his mega church, right? Just so happened to come across like all this money and stuff that was being stashed back there. I wasn't able to find any updates on that story. You would think there would be some questions about that, like, where did all this money come from and why is it being hidden behind a thing? Of course, remember, folks, that churches don't have to pay taxes on anything, so who knows where it came from? Joel Osteen doesn't have to say shit because he doesn't even have to report any of the money that he gets from his church. He doesn't have to report that to anyone. He doesn't have to be held accountable to anyone for that. He could be taking in millions upon millions of dollars, and it could be going who knows where. Churches don't have any like legal oversight the same way that a company or a corporation does. That's interesting. Another thing you may remember Joel Osteen from, his name was in the news not that long ago, was during a flood in Texas where basically people were fucking like, had no place to go, and he closed the doors of his church and wouldn't because he has like this huge giant like stadium church, and he wouldn't let anybody take shelter in his giant fucking stadium church. And the reason why he cited is because they just had the carpets redone. Mighty fucking Christian of you, Joel Osteen. Right. So that's the kind of guy Joel Osteen is. Joel Osteen is one of these mega church dudes. He's a prosperity gospel kind of guy. You know, give your life to Jesus and donate and the Lord will give you back 10 times what you donate and all that stuff. And then when it actually comes to helping the poor, the sick, and the needy, like, Jesus tells you to, he kind of turns his back, tells them to go piss up a rope. That's fucking Joel Osteen. So that's where this shooting happened. And this really wasn't a mass shooting. It looks like only one person was actually killed. But these are the facts, okay? The shooter, her name was a 36-year-old woman named Janice Yvonne Moreno. And this is one of the rare instances where the shooter actually is a woman. Someone who was born female, assigned female at birth, but was not a trans person. And we'll get into that in a little bit because that's part of the conspiracy too. But yeah, this person was actually a woman. One of the rare instances where a woman was the perpetrator of a mass shooting. 36 years old. She was killed at the scene by an off-duty police officer. Managed to kill one person. She brought her 7-year-old son with her, and he was actually shot in the head. And as far as I could tell, is still alive, maybe in critical condition, but he's still alive, so that's kind of tragic. Poor kid, hope he survives. She used an AR-15 with the word Palestine written on it. So there were also rumors of her having a bomb, but no explosive devices were found. So that would kind of seem like that was the motive, right? Okay, well, she's got Palestine written on her gun there. Maybe she's like doing this in part of some kind of terrorism kind of thing. But nope, the investigators have said that it has nothing to do with terrorism. This actually appears to be a genuine case of basically this woman had mental problems, mental illness. She was insane and was diagnosed with schizophrenia before. And the anti-Semitism part seems to come from her estranged ex-husband, who was of Jewish ancestry. And apparently they went through a very messy divorce, and that's part of the reason why they found anti-Semitic writings in her possessions. She has had reports from her neighbors for appears to be many years where she was threatening and belligerent, and her neighbors tried to report her to the authorities, but nobody could do anything about it because the authorities are not allowed to just throw you in jail for being an asshole. You have to actually break the law. Or if you're just mean and you yell and stuff, but you don't actually say, I'll kill you, or something like that, then that may be threatening, but you didn't threaten harm. There's very specific conditions by which the police are allowed to say a threat is legit. And apparently she didn't meet any of these in the past. Although she was put in emergency detention in 2016 due to a mental health issue. Now, when you're put in emergency detention, that's when you actually have been determined to be either a risk to the safety of yourself or others. So at least one time in the past decade, she was put under detention like that, but was released. She's been arrested at least 6 times, one for evading arrest, one for assault on a public official, which, okay, I wonder what that was all about. There's no real details here. And then once for having an illegal weapons charge, where during a traffic stop, they found 2 firearms in her car. Despite that, though, despite the illegal weapons charge, she was still able to legally buy the AR-15 that she used during the shooting. So, kind of says something about the gun laws in Texas there, even when you're getting arrested for having guns you're not supposed to have, that doesn't stop you from going and buying another gun, does it? Kind of seems like Texas has a problem with their gun laws. That's what's going on. That's the actual truth behind it. The woman just seems to be genuinely mentally ill. And, of course, is dead now. They killed her. But it doesn't seem like there was anything political involved in this actual shooting. They didn't say she had a manifesto or anything. They just said anti-Semitic writings. Not a lot of details there. For all we know, that could have been a diary or something. But that has not stopped the conspiracy theories from flying. You know, conspiracy theories that she was an actual plant from, Hamas or some shit like that. Here's one that I found here that you guys may be interested in. This is somebody on Reddit saying that she is a CIA asset. This is from Reddit, from Conspiracy. Another MK Ultra asset that was probably targeted by the feds to manipulate and provoke violent action. This will be swept under the rug for obvious reasons. Now, what proof does this person have? I'm not even going to say what this guy's name is. You can read it on the screen if you want. What proof does this guy have that this woman was an MK Ultra asset? Okay, for those of you guys who don't know, Let's turn this fucking baloney off here. I think I made my point. So those of you guys who don't know, MK Ultra was a program back in the 60s and 70s where the CIA was doing various methods of mind control. And the idea was they wanted to see if there was a way that they could use essentially brainwashing in order to control people and do things like plant like sleeper agents and maybe control soldiers on a battlefield, stuff like that. And there were lots of really crazy experiments. The cool thing about, well, not the cool thing, but the crazy thing about all this is that MK Ultra was real. They actually did stuff like douse people with LSD without their knowledge, that kind of thing, right? Do drug experiments on people and all kinds of weird shit like that. MK Ultra was something that actually happened. But there's lots of conspiracy theories about MK Ultra, and so it's kind of hard to tell the truth from fiction. And some people say that they always attribute all kinds of weird, crazy shit that may or may not have actually happened to MK Ultra. Everything from the creation of sort of Manchurian candidate sleeper agents to straight up fucking mind control, implanting stuff in people's brains and controlling them like puppets and all this other shit. Conspiracy theories are, the theorists, they always go completely off the fucking rails when it comes to this stuff. Even when it comes to things where it's like, okay, yeah, we know it happened. We know this stuff was true. That kind of thing. You would think that would be enough. You would think, okay, here's the stuff that's actually been confirmed to have happened. You would think that would be enough, but it's like, no, they always have to add even more fantastical elements to it. But here's the thing about that. That guy just said another MK Ultra asset. Well, MK Ultra was something that ended in the 70s, I believe. I think it started in the 60s and went through maybe the 70s, right? So was this woman programmed by the CIA 50 years ago? Or are they implying that MK Ultra is still a thing? That it's still being done behind the scenes, that kind of thing? Is that what they're trying to say? Like, and what proof do you have of that? No proof at all. No proof whatsoever. Because remember, folks, when to a conspiracy theorist, any time there's a mass shooter, it's always a psyop. Anytime there's a mass shooter, anything that may happen out there that would possibly, like any kind of event that may possibly have the potential to turn the public towards accepting gun control, is obviously a CIA asset. That's something you got to, for some reason, the CIA really, really, really wants us to have gun control. For a reason that I just can't figure out why. Like, why does the CIA give a shit if people have guns, for fuck's sake? What's the... I mean, of course, that the answer to that is a big, larger exploration of the one, the New World Order conspiracy and all this other shit where it's like, well, they got to take away the guns so they can take over and blah, 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 blah. I don't want to get into all that shit. But it just doesn't make any sense. Like, if they really wanted there to be gun control, don't you think they would do something like, say, I don't know, bribe politicians to pass the law for there to be gun control, instead of just sponsoring like random fucking wackaloons to go on shooting sprees? Don't you think they would just go to the politician directly and be like, hey, if you fucking vote for this gun control thing, here's $1 million? Don't you think they would just do that? Don't you think they would get better fucking results that way? Of course they would. Then they never think about that. Obviously no. Right. So fucking stupid. Here's some more. This one is also from Reddit. I just zoomed in on this a whole lot, but let's check it out. This is from Matt Walsh. We need to have a national conversation about the epidemic of trans violence in this country. Trans violence. Just in, the shooter at Joel Osteen Lakewood's church has been identified as a transgender Bernie Sanders supporter. The individual was identified as Denise Moreno, who was previously known as Jeffrey Escalante. Moreno, who is clear and stable, allegedly bought a whatever, blah, blah, blah. That's her. That's what she looks like. Spoilers, folks. This woman is not a trans woman. She is not trans. She was born a woman. She identifies as a woman. Now, where did they get the trans part from? It's because she's schizophrenic. She's schizophrenic, and she would often go by the alias Jeffrey Escalante. Even her ex-husband called her Jeffrey. But she never at any time identified as a man. She was always identified as a woman. She was born, assigned female at birth, always identified as a woman her whole life, even though she had this schizophrenic thing and had an alias that had nothing to do with her sexuality at all, or her sexual identity, or anything like that, her gender identity, none of that shit. They completely pulled this straight out of their buttholes. It's because of this. You see here, this is like a police record with like different aliases that she had. And Bernie Sanders, so she posted one time. This looks like it's Reddit or some shit, or not Reddit. This looks like Instagram. She posted one time about Bernie Sanders, right? Isn't Bernie Sanders Jewish? How do you get the square the anti-Semitism with supporting a Jewish candidate? How does that fucking work, right? Maybe they're just forgetting all about the Jewish part here. Now that, they have this big, juicy trans conspiracy theory, maybe being trans outweighs anti-Semitism when it comes to the conspiracy theory brain or some shit. I don't know. Completely fucking dumb. But you notice, folks, through all of these conspiracy theories, right? We talked about the CIA thing, right? We talked about MK Ultra, right? We talked about her being a secret trans woman or trans man or whatever. What did we not talk about? Through all of this stuff, what did we not talk about? We did not talk about gun laws in Texas, which allowed a crazy person to get her hands on an AR-15. We did not talk about that. And this is one of the ways that these types of conspiracy theories are very damaging to our country and the political discourse. I mentioned that this woman was arrested for gun charges, for basically having guns she wasn't allowed to have. But she was still able to actually legally buy an AR-15 and do a public mass shooting with it, I guess. It still counts as a mass shooting, even though she was the only person who actually died. Right? But it still counts. Would have been a fucking massacre if there weren't off-duty police officers there to kill her. And we're not talking about that. That's the one thing that we have through all of this stuff. And that's what conspiracy theories do. Conspiracy theories obfuscate the actual real problem, right? The real problem in this case is that people who shouldn't have guns are able to get their hands on guns in this country. That's the actual real problem here. That this woman shouldn't have had a gun, and the fact that she was able to get her hands on multiple weapons and engage in a fucking shooting with them shows the actual breakdown in priority of our country, in our country here. That, and the fact that we're not doing anything about that, and we're not even talking about it. We're not even talking about it. Because what are we talking about? We're talking about her being a secret CIA fucking agent. You know, CIA MK Ultra brainwash Manchurian candidate or whatever. We're talking about that. We're talking about the fact that, you know, oh, she's possibly a trans person because she fucking like had a male name as one of her aliases. We're talking about everything except what we fucking should be talking about. It's the fact that gun laws in this country are fucked up. And she shouldn't have had a gun. And that's one of the real big problems that we don't, you know, that's what conspiracy theories do. They obfuscate the actual real problems. That's what makes them so goddamn insidious. I don't know, folks. Just another example of how fast this stuff evolves. You know, this shooting only happened a couple of days ago. As of this recording, this shooting only happened about 3 days ago. And already the conspiracy theories just fucking propagate everywhere. It's just they grow organically, and it's a sign of sickness in our country, folks. You got to fight back against this stuff. If you know people that are into this kind of shit, please talk to them about it. Your friends and your family who are into this stuff, get them therapy. Because this shit isn't healthy.
Hello folks, if you like what I do and you want to support the channel, please consider buying something from my Etsy shop, supporting me on Patreon, liking and subscribing, and checking me out across my social media links listed below. Thank you all so much, and see you next time.